Oh my God.
I'm so sorry, babe. When I went live, and we're live right now, just so you know, but when I went live to tell everybody that you weren't coming on because we couldn't figure it out, part of me just wanted to blame you. I just wanted to be like, he doesn't get it. His computer's old, like he can't figure it out. But then actually most of me was like, no, Tara, this is totally your fault. And I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But today, what I'm going to do is, because this laptop is, I don't know, 7 years, I'll buy a new one today.
Okay.
All the latest and greatest so that I'm prepared in the future. So.
Okay, awesome. So initially when I came on, like, babe, I got to tell you, like, it was the biggest draw to my Facebook Live, and people were messaging me this morning and last night after I posted that we were going to go live, that they're like, what are you guys going to talk about? Like, they couldn't believe this. And I was thinking, why are people so interested in what we're going to talk about? Like, we're just going to talk about business. But then I was thinking about our relationship and our online persona, and I can see how people would be curious about, you know, you and I, obviously with the age difference, right? And then I rave about you, obviously. So anyway, thanks for being here, honey. I know you're busy. And
I'm stoked to be here, actually. I'm just so happy that we got it figured out. So, you know, like, wow. It was like...
Me too. Okay, so first question. Tell me all about your amazing wife. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's go into this, because you are, and for those of you who are watching who know me from my previous media production life, you know that I had a media production company where I interviewed financial guys, right? I talked to you guys in the stock market. That was my job. That's what I did. And it was super boring because not everybody in that industry is as charismatic and charming as this guy. But I have to tell you, the reason why I tell you that is because I've met a lot of smart business people, entrepreneurs, not just men, but women too. And I have to tell you, and I'm not just being biased, Phil is the smartest guy I know and that I have ever met. So if you have any questions during this, just drop them, because this is your chance. And when I say, you know, Phil, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, babe, but you know, he's a consultant. He consults with companies, individuals on how to do things better, to structure their companies better, and I'm not actually, I'll let you speak to this, but I just want to let you guys know what's happening right now. Take advantage of the time, because these moments for people in businesses cost thousands of dollars to sit down with Phil. And for those of you coming to step into abundance, you're going to have access to Phil all weekend. So babe, I think it's really important to kind of just jump into this. In what advice would you give your 30-year-old self now, today?
Okay. Can you give me just one quick second here, babe? Because after all of this rigmarole this morning and Charlene running around and helping me out, I just got a low battery signal on my computer. I can't believe it. And so I'm going, oh my God. So
that's okay. It's awesome, because it's just going to give people more time to jump on. So if you can think of any questions, okay. Actually, so that'll give you a chance. Go get your chance.
Where I'm here, I just need to get this, right? In this restaurant. Here we have it, a plug.
Awesome.
Okay, so let me just plug this in right here for a second and change a couple of things around on our lighting, and then we're going to jump into our questions here. Wow, people must think that we're a complete mess, huh?
I know. Well, it's funny because Jeff Mosley, who I just messaged, he said, it's okay. He said, don't you guys live in the same house? Yes, we do. But like you guys, we're not 9 to 5 people. We don't see each other all the time, because I'm going or he's going. And when we do connect, I think that's why our relationship is as awesome as it is, because he's gone a lot, right? Where he is right now, he's working on buses this weekend. He is over, for those of you who don't know, we have a company called Green Power Motor Company that we started, or that, you know, Phil started. When I first met him, he was just just starting it. And I said, what? You build electric transit buses? Like, can those move? He's like, well, they can and they will. He was like, I'm going to go and build them. So this is what we do. So he's up at the manufacturing facility right now because we got this huge deal for our manufacturing facility to actually go up in California. Like, it's amazing. And so he's over there right now and he's just taking the time to do this. Are you all plugged in, babe?
I am. I got lights, camera, a little tiny bit of action, but
you better not be getting any action.
Well, not that kind of action anyway. So anyway, okay. Hello, everybody. Gosh, I'm so sorry that we got a little messed up, but I'm here. So yeah, fire away, honey.
Okay, so Phil's main success in life started, like, I think, babe, your biggest deal was when you were 27 or so. You started flipping real estate. Let's go back there. You started with flipping real estate, right? So go there just for about 2 or 3 minutes on how the chain of events worked. And don't forget to throw in your bankruptcy in there. I want to talk about that too.
Okay, well, that's great. That was later, but yeah, obviously, I mean, I started out as a young man. I bought my first business when I was 23 years old. And when I bought that company, it was a bankrupt company. So I bought that company, and with the help of a family friend, I ran that company through what's called an informal proposal, where essentially, you know, if you were to quickly, say what happened is I restructured all the debt of the company, got everybody to agree to the restructuring of the debt, and ran the company through an informal proposal, took it out of bankruptcy, and then I began to operate it. I ran it for 3.5 years, almost 4 years successfully, actually through the World's Fair. And then, which is what I always do at the end of the day, I rolled the company up into a publicly traded company and sold it off, and made my first $3 million at 27. So it was pretty exciting. And
80 years ago, that was a lot of money, right?
That's right. It still is a lot of money.
Still is a lot of money, that's for sure. Okay, so that was like a tiny, tiny synopsis, but let's go back to kind of the questions that I laid out. And I've watched you, obviously over the last 8 years, ebb and flow through so many different things. But one thing, and there's been many things that have remained consistent, because obviously consistency is success. You do anything for long enough, like try to get live and get your camera working, persistence always breaks down resistance. And so you've been an incredible role model in that area. And I noticed that you have 5 or so, a small amount of people who remain very consistent in your life. And maybe you could just kind of tap into the traits of those people and what that has meant to your success.
Sure. Okay. Well, I've always been a guy that says if you can, count your friends on one hand, you're a very lucky guy. And for me, I believe I'm probably one of the most blessed people in the world when it comes to that. The people that have been most influential in my life, believe it or not, are the people that have been around my life the longest. When you ask about a question such as that, would say who's been the biggest influencer and stuff like that, and everybody always wants to jump to an author or a book author or some sort of a big business guy or a Google personality or an Apple personality. For me, the biggest influence in my life have been the people that have been around me the longest. One of the key people is a gentleman by the name of Jerry Conrad, who's, I went to work for him as a young man. He's my close and personal friend, and he's almost like a second father to me. And we've been connected for 40 years. So I trust his counsel. I value his friendship like beyond measure. It's incredible, and he's well into his 80s today. And even though he looks like he's in his 60s, but he's a tremendous guy. He's a super sharp guy. He's a great friend. He's a great businessman. But what I love about him the most is that, he'll always give you an objective opinion that is just founded on his gut, what he thinks. It's not influenced by anybody or anything else. It's just what he thinks,
100%. And I feel like you offer that to so many of your friends. You offer that for me. I always know that I'm going to get a straight answer from you. And I think actually that's what people appreciate about you and I, is that we never are going to sugarcoat things. Everything always comes from love. But hey, listen, like if you want to do something, if you want to get something done, you need to know the truth. And so I think a lot of times we have these people in our lives, and this goes for women especially. We have these people in our lives that they placate us, or they say, yay, yay, that's so great. And then they'll just talk behind your back. So I would say that one of the characteristics that you're talking about is imperative, because when you're so thick into this, babe, I mean, you say 40 years, I mean, you're so thick into your core group that maybe a tiny bit you just take it for granted. But there's a lot of people out there who the 5 closest people in their lives are doing the same thing every single day, and they're not up leveling each other. If there's one thing that I recognize about you and your group and your closest friends, is that you're constantly up leveling each other. When you get around each other, you don't talk about crap. You don't talk about other people or crappy things unless you're talking about the president. Not this president, but maybe a previous president. That's really the extent of your negative chatter is politics. But you talk about big things like yacht charters and private planes and real estate deals you want to do and companies you want to build. So I would say, since we'll move on from that, I would say, if I can just kind of add that in, is that the most important thing about the 5 people that surround Phil's life is that they up level each other all the time.
Correct. I would agree with that. I think that, before we move on to the next question, I think what's important about that is, and one thing that you should ask yourself as an individual, and whoever your people are your people. But in my relationships, and I hold them very closely, I look at it that I'm looking for a specific response or an answer, to something. In other words, if you're just looking for lip service when you're talking to people, what do you think about this and what do you think about that? And then they go on ad nauseum about stuff. That's exactly what you're going to get. But if you drill down on the specifics about, hey, listen, you know what? If you don't mind, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I want your counsel on something, and be specific about that. And you may not like the answer, but you're gonna get. And by the way, you don't even have to like the answer. It's just an objection, right? It's just an opinion about. But you want to get some information on something, and so I really value that. I truly love to counsel with people like that, because they just give me what I want to hear.
Right, but you want to prepare yourself to remove the emotion out of business. And I think that's, one thing I'd like to talk about is the emotional side of business. It doesn't exist for you. There's no emotion in business. There's no emotion in transactions for you. It's like money in, money out. Like it just flows. So what could you say to that?
Well, there's no place for, emotion in business, right? Our lives are filled with emotions. And so, and we can be consumed by them. So again, I guess what you want to really look at is when you're in business, or when you're operating a business, or whatever it is you're doing, you want to ask yourself, what are the core or key values or questions to what it is you want, right? So an emotion never has a part, or can never play a part in the business side of what you're doing. If it does, I promise you'll fail, right? You have to strike emotion from your business side of things, and you have to say to yourself, okay, what is it that I want? What is it that I want to obtain, and how am I going to go about getting it?
Yeah. So what is it that I want, and what is it that I want to obtain? The only way to do that is to create risk, right? Is to step into uncomfortable situations. Would you agree? And talk, hang on one second. I'll be right back. Go ahead, babe.
Oh, risk. Okay. Yeah. For me, risk is everything when it comes to business, because without risk, there's no reward. And in every part of our lives, we take risks every single day, and we don't even realize it, right? Because people, you get in your car, you drive from point A to point B. You get in, you allow your children to swim and play around the pool. We eat certain foods that may or may not be good for us. And all of those things have a very high element of risk, and we don't even pay attention to it. Why is that? We don't pay attention to it because we're comfortable with it. So when we start a new business and we're in an area that we're not comfortable with, we associate risk with an element of fear. And so, because we don't understand it. So without risk, there is really and truly no reward, right? So, I always try to take a look at what's the end result when it comes to risk. And what's the best way to mitigate risk? Use exactly the same lettered word, but change it into reward, right? So if you're scared about the risk, try to imagine about what the reward is. For instance, we talk about driving our cars every day, right? There's a high element of risk in driving our cars, but we're comfortable with it. And if we weren't comfortable with it, how we could get over that discomfort would be looking at the reward. What's the reward of driving your car from point A to point B? It's getting to where you want to be. That might be a playground with your children. It might be
I know, babe. And I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just like, I'm thinking about the people who are watching this video and like they take no risks and you take who you are for granted. You do. Because you do this very effortlessly, honey. You are just like, you are Phillip Aldridge by default. But think of the people who, let's just take Vancouver Island for a second. Don't even leave the island. You leave the island, like you sometimes come back and forth to the island or before 3 times a week.
Right.
So I want you to talk to the people who literally don't even leave they don't go on holidays. They don't do anything. They don't take any risks.
Right. And so without risk, there is no reward, right? So, if you don't take a holiday, that's because you didn't risk what was required in order to have that vacation. Or if you're not getting what it is that you want out of your family life, it's because you didn't risk what was required to receive that reward.
But what's the biggest risk you took other than getting with me?
Well, that was a huge one. That's my biggest, that's for sure. But what do I risk? I risk everything. Yeah, I risk everything every day. And let's not confuse risk with being foolish, right? I'm not a foolish person. I'm very calculating in the risks that I take. I do my homework. I think about what it is I want to do and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you want a bigger business, if you want a bigger home, if you want a nicer car, if you want all those things, they all require risk. And so your risk needs to have a plan, right? And you need to think about the risks you want to take, think them through, develop a plan, and then follow your plan. So
here's one, because I can hear my clients right now. They're going, but my husband thinks, or my wife thinks, or what are people going to think? And there's one thing about you that sets you aside from everybody and me as well. We don't care what people think, right? So when did you stop caring what people thought?
Well, I can't say that I've never stopped caring about what people think, because we all care about what people think. At the end of the day, and I'll speak to this in 2 parts on you, but at the end of the day, I've never stopped caring about what people think. But here's the difference. I commit my days, my mornings, and stuff like that to prayer for 3 or 4 minutes. I'm grateful for everything I have in this world, and I thank God for it every single day. And before I start my day or go about my mission, I pray that my family is safe and that what I'm about to do is in line with God's will, and I go about my day. Mm-hmm. So, and because I do that, I know that all the decisions I make that day weren't just made by me, but they're founded on a higher power. And so they're always right. They're always good.
You just gave me
to talk about the things you were talking about just a minute ago, where people are saying, well, I'm listening and my husband thinks this, or my wife thinks that, or this isn't right, or, they want this. I have a couple little simple terms, and one of them is called the Ema Effect, right? And people are like, the Ema Effect, what's that? And this is something that, as we get further into, the classes and stuff that you're doing, and I'm going to teach that. But very simply, here's what the Ema Effect is, right? It's the EMA the EMA effect is, from a female standpoint, to your family, you are emotionally attached, right? That's the EA. Yeah, for women.
Okay.
How are you connected with your family? So, and when I call it the EMA effect, the women drop out of the M effect and they fall into the E effect, the emotional attachment. For men, in the EMA effect, they fall out of the emotional attachment side of their family and they fall into the material attachment. And so that's why we have these little conflicts where our wives say, well, my husband thinks this, and back and forth. And here's what it all boils down to. people say material attachment, what's that? As a man, as a male, and as most men, from a very early age, we are programmed to make sure that we go out and we slay our dragons because we've got a certain amount of things that have to be done to ensure that material side of our family is fulfilled. Mortgage payments, house payments, car payments, whatever they all are, they've got to be done. And from the female side, they are emotionally attached to our families. They look after our children, they care, they nurture, they do all of those things. And so what's happening today is, because of this type of effect, more and more what I call new power couples are coming up where husbands and wives are just doing these things together. I'm sure we've all seen a video where we watch this super power couple stand up on the stage and they're just like, wow, I wish that we were just like them. I wish that we could do all these things and do all that stuff. And the answer to that is that you can, and I'm going to share with you how you can do it. Not today, but at a later date, because the reason that you're not that way is because of the EMA effect, the emotional and material attachments to your family. And how do you cross those bridges? When you women are talking to your husbands about, hey, I want to do this and I want to do that, you're coming at it from an emotional standpoint. He's responding from a material one. And so there's a clash. And so how do you get him to understand? It's really easy, ladies, but it's so complicated that nobody can figure it out. I know the answer. You know why? Because I'm a male, right? And I've had the great fortitude of spending, the last 8 years of my life with you, and somebody like you, Tara, has done something for me that nobody in this world has done, and that is that you have absolutely ignited my emotions. You haven't increased them or enhanced them. You've ignited them. You've lit them up. And I never really understood what that meant. And again, I don't want to get into all of that now, but I'm going to share that with you later. So the EMA effect, the emotional attachment to your family and the material attachment to your family, they are complete opposites. And until you find a way to bridge those, you're always going to have the yin and yang there. You're always going to have, well, my husband says or my wife says.
It's so true because as women, we come from an emotional standpoint. And I just had a coaching call about this girl who wanted to ask her husband to come to our event at the end of the month. And I said, okay, so how did it go? And she says, well, he said no. I'm like, what do you mean he said no? And I said, well, how did you ask him? And she said, well, I said, it's this amount of money and I know that Christmas is coming and I know this, but I really want to go. I'm like, oh, that's enticing. How about something like this? So it costs this much, but I know that with this, she was doing Young Living. With this Young Living business, if I just get some self-development, I can triple my team in the next 3 months, which will bring in $15,000. Like, right. That's a different conversation, right? So I totally get it. And as women, we downplay ourselves. And because we're in this shift of women really accessing their power, you've watched me evolve, babe, right? From just being, a really young girl in my late 20s to a mom, and now into launching this really successful career that you've totally supported me through. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? Fill them in there, over there. I have a couple more here, babe, if you don't mind. So I wanted to ask you, because I just see you operating as face value, and obviously we have our intimate conversations, but we're apart a lot. So I want to know that when we're apart, what keeps you connected to me, Cooper, and Capri in your heart and your mind? Because I know that there's weaknesses in relationships, and I want to switch from business to relationships. And I think I have an idea, because I think what keeps me connected to you keeps you connected to me. But I think there's a really big lack in relationships. You're talking about that power couple, and what the foundation of having a super successful relationship is, especially when you spend so much time apart. So how do you make our relationship count when we're apart?
Wow. That's a great question.
I'm totally taking advantage of this time to get information on you.
Again, first of all, I think that the biggest connecting force for me is in our relationship and in my family is gratitude. I think that, every day, and I take moments throughout the day to be grateful for what it is I have. And again, simple acts like, saying a prayer before we have something to eat, or when you're standing outside and the sun's shining on your face, how amazing that feels. And I think that, the same as relationships and stuff, we have a tendency to take too many things for granted, right? And so, and we need to understand that we need to be a lot more grateful for things. I get to wake up to you most mornings. In fact, I'd love it to be every morning, but of course I travel. And so, and in doing so, we sometimes take for granted just how amazing that is, just how beautiful you are from the time you go to sleep to the time you wake up to throughout our day. My children walk into our bedroom and they just explode and jump on the bed and give us a kiss and a hug, and they're just, children are the best example of complete and utter gratitude, right? Their love is selfless, and they're just so grateful for everything. And so, how do I keep my relationship strong? I'm grateful for it, and more so than I've ever been of any relationship in my entire life, and I mean that wholeheartedly, with right from the bottom of my gut. Like, I am completely and utterly grateful for you and my children and just everything that we have.
Yeah, and babe, obviously, thank you, and back at you. But when I think about the 5 people that we talked about at the beginning, your husband or your wife needs to be in those 5 people, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So when you think about the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most and that you value the most, if your wife or your husband isn't one of those people, you got to make that right. You got to make that strong. That's the foundation and the umbrella, as we've talked about before, honey, that, makes it all happen. Nothing thrives outside of you and your other. And if you don't have an other, it's you, and it's you and your family, or it's you and your heart and you and your message. So one thing that I know that for me, keeping connected to you, is how much you inspire me, and watching me inspire you. That keeps me so strongly connected to you. And I love watching how generous you are, generous with your advice, like being here right now when I know you canceled a meeting to deal with this stuff, generous with just people who need your help in general. And so how much would you say giving back, not just in money, but in time, because time is so valuable to you. I know it's more valuable to you than money. In your life, like giving back, how much of a percentage would you say, and how important is that to you and your business?
It's really hard to quantify it in terms of a percentage. I can tell you this much. I don't give back near enough, let the truth be known. We really need to give back more. And we really need to share, of ourselves more. When you ask a question, well, how much do you give back? Like, what do you give back to society, or what do you contribute, or what, and people have a tendency to sort of pigeonhole that and just say, well, it's, through this organization or that organization or everything. But, to me, it's a much broader picture than that. When you commit time to giving back, it's giving time of yourself, and that's not just to your family, but it's to others, to maybe a resource, committing some of your resources to a project. It might be labor, in terms of going down and help cleaning up a park or something like that. So, so to answer your question, I love to give back, and generally most of my giving back is through some sort of financial aid into some project I believe in, or with some people, or through my counsel. Do I need to do more of it? Absolutely, you bet. So I don't think that you could really quantify that by a percentage, and what's a successful number. It's something that comes from your heart, and I think it comes from a time management perspective. And if we are effective in the way we manage our time and how we do things, it just allows us to have more time to give back, whether that's to family, to friends, to people, to society, whatever that is. So I need to do more.
You always feel like you need to do more. We have a family foundation.
Right.
Do more. So, okay. So I want to go back to my first question that you were like, I don't know, when we were starting to get the charger and everything. What would you give, and we'll end on this, honey, because I know you need to go. But what advice would you give your 30-year-old self? And I want you in here, talk about the time that you went bankrupt. I want you to share with people that you need to lose to win. Like, just because you fall doesn't mean that you don't get up and that you don't try again and you do it even bigger the next time. Can you share about that time in your life, or do you not want to go there?
Yeah, no. I'm happy to go there, right? Like they were a couple of
Well, you don't have to talk about that. You don't have to talk about the specifics. Just, there was a really low point in Phil's 30s, right? In your late 30s, where you thought you were like on the top of your game, and you were, for all intents and purposes. I mean, holy smokes, you were on freaking fire. And then everything fell out from underneath you, right? And then you just rebuilt it back 3 times fold. So go through that.
Okay, so having setbacks in your life, or big setbacks in your life, whatever they might be it material, be it financial, be it a relationship, or whatever it is, they're all sort of fear-based, right? And when things go wrong, and we find we've all been through a relationship that broke up, and so we're just like, oh my gosh, and so the next time around we're a little more guarded. And business is the same way. We go out and we give our best efforts, and sometimes things can go wrong, and you wind up in a bad situation. You go broke or you go bankrupt. So for me, I learned 2 very important things, from that, and from the relationship, because I had a marriage before, obviously, that fell apart, and a big part of that stemmed from some of those problems. So if I can speak just very quickly about that in terms of a relationship, what did I learn from that deal? I learned to be, one word, vulnerable. If you are completely and utterly vulnerable in your relationships, with your partner, and you give 100% of yourself, and when I'm talking about giving, I mean fall absolutely and completely and deeply in love. Just let it go. Be vulnerable. Put it out there. Does that mean you're not going to get hurt? No. But the chances are it's gonna go the other way. I, at an early age in my life, chose not to be vulnerable because I didn't want to be hurt. And as a result of me not being vulnerable, I did get hurt, and I hurt others, which was ridiculous, right? It was a compounding situation. So what have I learned now? I've learned to be, in my relationship, completely vulnerable, right? I just put it out there, tell the truth, no matter what, just tell the truth. If it might hurt, it might, bring you to your knees, but whatever it is, there's a complete and utter honesty in vulnerability, right? And and the great thing about being vulnerable is that you're open, and you're open to any and all, which makes, opportunities flow your way because you're open to everything. You never know what's coming. That's the first thing. From a business standpoint, I learned another thing that's very, very important. And for those people that know me over the years, you've heard me, probably use this term a few times. And that term is that money is a tool, right? The problem with money is money has this big bad attachment to it. It's called emotion. And people are emotionally attached to money, okay? Because they believe that money defines who they are. Money doesn't define you. You define money. And so the reason that I tell you that money is a tool, I'm not emotionally attached to money at all. To me, money is like a hammer to a carpenter. It's like a wrench to a mechanic, right? It's a tool. It's necessary to complete the job. So I'm not a mechanic, so I don't have a box full of wrenches. And, but I am a businessman, and I do have, pardon me, a box full of money. And when I invest that money, when I put that money in places, I'm not emotional about it. I don't think about, well, I'm only going to give this much.
Totally isn't. The beginning when I met him, I'm just going to interject because it's absolutely 100%. My mind was blown. I'd be like, are you kidding me?
Right. It's a tool, right? Whether it's 100,000, whether it's 1.6 million. And I think I know the time when you were with me, babe, when I walked along and we were looking at, I banged into this guy and the guy had a building for sale and you were standing there and the guy said to me, I want this, this, and this. And I walked around and I said, you know what? Sounds good to me. I'll take it. And you just looked at me and you're just like, what? And the guy looked at me and he goes, what? I said, done deal. Like, just give me your information. I'm going to wire you the money and we're done. Right. Yeah. So, and that's what I'm talking about, right? There's no emotion attached to, to what it takes to acquire that, right? Because to me, it's all about the end result. Like, what's the game? Don't focus on the emotions of trying to get to it. Focus on being finished. What does that look like? It's like starting a business, right? There's so much emotions in starting a business, right?
Oh.
People always just say, how many times have you heard me when I counsel with people and they say, well, I'm going to start a business. I'm like, okay, let's start from the beginning. Let's get incorporated. Let's set up a proper structure. Let's do this. Let's do that. And they look at you and they go, yeah, that sounds really good, but I don't really want to start out like that. If you don't mind, I just want to kind of keep it small for a little bit. And I just want to control a few things. And I just want to go along and do a little bit at a time, right? Already failed. You haven't even started and you've just failed. Because if you tell yourself that I just want to start it out small and I just want to go along and manage it a little out and see how it goes, I'll tell you exactly how it goes. It's going to go down. You're going to see how it goes, right? You need to have the mindset of we're not building a box when we form a corporation of which we put things into. When we form a corporation, it's a massive vacuum upon which things get pulled into, right? And the speed and size of which those things are pulled into that vacuum is directed by you.
Yeah.
And so you got to build the vacuum before you start.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments. Bill said, would you say using video connection while you're away has an impact? Oh yeah, 100%. And then Brittany, like, it's everything. FaceTime and Skype to us, has really been a huge foundation of our relationship. And yeah, Brittany just said there's so many emotions in starting a business. Yeah, yes. But if you're recognizing those emotions, you need to, if there's one thing that I watch Phil do, it's become super laser focused and there's no emotion that ever creeps in. You're incorporating a company every 10 days, babe.
Right. So, and to you women out there that are thinking about starting a business, you should just get about it and get started. And if anything I can do to counsel that and help you do it, I'm happy to do it. When you're thinking about starting those things and you're in a relationship that is, perhaps with your husband or something like that, and especially if your husband is has a business that's second or third generation, or perhaps his entire family's been in businesses and, he set up his own deal. Men have this little psyche about them. I call it the TT effect. And it's like the TT effect. What is that? And that's the time or the time trial effect. And what is the time trial effect? Some of you might have been married to a husband or married to someone or in a relationship with a guy that's a third generation business owner. And when you're talking to them about that, the de facto argument on all things is, well, you know what? My grandfather did it like that and my father did it like that. And that's the way I'm doing it. And we continue to be that thing. So I tell you this, when you're going to start a business, take all of that and, it's great advice. And that's exactly what it is. It's advice, right? Take it as advice. It's not defined. It's not given to you in stone. It's not cast in stone. It's strictly advice. Take it for what it is, process it, understand it, and then shelf it. If you need it, you can go over here and pull from it. But ladies, start your deal. And when you start your deal, think big. Don't think box. Don't try to package it up. Think vacuum, right? Huge vacuum, right? That's what you want. And
so many women in my audience, and you know this, babe, that do multi-level marketing companies, and they're so stuck on what their upline's doing or what they were told at their convention, which are all really great things, but it takes something special and something unique, which I truly believe in, which I coach all my MLM clients, is to think outside the box. What's your message? So
Right.
on that, if there are no more questions, I am going to let this guy. Oh, Jeff Mosley says, I hope he writes a book. Well, isn't that such a nice thing for you to say, Jeff? Because he is writing a book because I'm making him write a book. What's your book called, babe?
The Loopholes.
Life's Loopholes by Phillip Aldridge.
That's right. Life's Loopholes. And I didn't want to give the whole title up, babe. I don't want it to be stolen. But yes, it's called Life's Loopholes. And they're not necessarily loopholes. They're just, it's just great, real solid, founded, common sense stuff. So, but ladies, I wish you every success. And for those of you that are in an MLM business,
he got cut off.
Oh, what happened, babe?
Anyways, I'm going to end this. I don't know. We probably went over time. I don't even know if I'm still on. But you guys, he's amazing. I don't know where he went, but we were done anyway. I'm so glad that got to happen. Thank you for your questions and staying tuned in and for loving my guy as much as I do. He's the best. And now you know what you're in for Step Into Abundance. He is scheduled like 4.5 hours the first day, and on the next day he's scheduled, I think, 3 hours to coach you. So, and I'm talking thousands of dollars people pay him. This is not an expensive event, and there's 2 rooms left. I hope to see you there.